Got it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this year's presentation is, if you were here last year, it's pretty much the same thing. We'll be presenting most of what is coming, not what happened in the past. And then, so blocktrades represent what his team is working on. I'll represent what I'm working on right now and some of the things we are excited to present. And at the end, we'll have basically an Ask Us Anything. This presentation is not intended to last for the full thing. The idea is mostly for us to be able to answer your questions live, and so you can like interact with us in a more direct manner. So yeah, without further ado, I'll leave the stage to blocktrades.
Thanks, Martin. So first, I should apologize. I probably made a few too many slides, so we might just skip over some if this runs too long. So as many of you know, a lot of recent core work has focused on Half, which is a new second layer framework for building Hive apps. That's because we believe that second layer apps are really the future for Hive, because they allow features to be added quickly without requiring hard forks. Now, you might ask why we need a new framework, as we've already seen a lot of apps successfully deployed on Hive. But those app developers had to overcome a lot of challenges, and they still face challenges today associated with scaling their apps and making sure they operate reliably. So the purpose of Half is to help with some of those challenges. To understand what Half does, it's useful to take a step back and look at the two general approaches for creating blockchain-based apps and some of the problems faced by each approach. The first approach, pioneered by Ethereum, was the development of smart contracts running on the first layer of the blockchain. Now on Hive, we use a very different approach, second layer apps. With this approach, users transact on the first layer, but the actual meaning of the transactions is defined by the second layer app itself, which watches the first layer. Now, there's a trade-off in these two different approaches. Smart contracts running on the first layer, any fork reversals in the block are automatically fixed by the smart contract engine. This means smart contracts don't have to worry about forks breaking them. But the problem with this approach is that every node in the blockchain has to run every smart contract, and that just doesn't scale very well. On the other hand, if you take the Hive approach using second layer apps, each node in the network can pick and choose what applications it wants to run. So it scales great, but each app has to write extra code to deal with forks, which can be tricky and painful. So where does this leave Hive-based development? It already scales well, as demonstrated by the success of dApps such as Splinterlands. But fork management is a challenge, and it was while looking for a solution to this problem that we came up with the idea for Half. Any app developed with Half can automatically rewind and replay the app's internal state, allowing devs to stay focused on the essential business logic of their application. Another problem that we saw with both of these approaches was a steep learning curve associated with programming a blockchain-based app. So really another design goal for Half was to make it very easy to use. So at this point, let's talk about some of the benefits of using Half. The easiest way to create a Half app from scratch is using Python and SQL. Python makes a great choice because not only is it easy to use, it's also the most popular programming language. So it's very easy to find developers. But you can actually develop a Half app in just about any language you want. The core Half code is SQL, and you can find a SQL binding for just about any popular programming language. So it's very easy to find developers. Another benefit of Half is it eliminates the learning curve associated with blockchain programming. Half automatically converts blockchain data into database tables. So you don't need to worry about finding and paying for an expensive blockchain expert. Any good coder should be up to the task. So another important feature of Half is that it was built for speed. Because it has built-in fork management, most Half apps can process a block as soon as it's generated, without having to wait for the block's data to become permanent. Because if the block gets lost in a fork, Half will automatically rewind and replay the app with whatever block replaces the block that was lost. And since Hive transactions typically can get put in a block within 1 to 3 seconds, this means you can build web-based apps that provide user feedback at a reasonable speed. Also, as I mentioned earlier, half apps scale easily because every half app doesn't need to run every other half node rather. This means a popular app can spin up as many dedicated server nodes as it might need for its own traffic, and those new nodes don't need to be burdened by running all the other apps on the blockchain. The final advantage of half apps is that they're designed for multi-core processing. A trend in the last 2 decades in CPU design has been to add more cores to processors to allow them to do more. For example, my favorite processor at the moment can run up to 32 threads simultaneously. Unfortunately, however, most apps can't take advantage of those extra cores due to their design. This is a particular problem for most smart contract-based apps. Smart contracts typically can use only a single thread to do their work. In fact, if you listened in the past few years to discussions on Ethereum or EOS dev talks, you'll probably hear a lot about plans for things like sharding, which are attempts to use more than one thread at a time. Half, by contrast, was designed from day one to make it easy to build apps that can fully utilize all the cores you give them. Now, a final benefit for half apps is a new level of interoperability for Hive applications. Multiple half apps can share a single common database. Not only does this lower the amount of resources needed to run the apps, it also potentially allows an app to directly read another app's state data. This is much faster than the traditional API-based approach that Hive apps have used up to now to communicate. So I guess the most common question asked about any software announcement is, when will it be ready? The good news is, while we're still improving half, it is production ready now, and we're already starting to build apps on top of it. In the future, I expect that the majority of new Hive functionality will be deployed via half-based apps. So if you're starting development of a new Hive app, I strongly recommend you try it out and find out all it has to offer. It's also worth mentioning that I think many existing Hive apps can take advantage of half without too much work either. So what's next for half? In our next development phase, we'll be designing a half smart contract processing engine. This will allow, for example, the creation of tokens that can be exchanged between half applications. I know there's been a lot of interest in that kind of service. But there's no delivery date for the smart engine quite yet, as we first need to scope out the scope of the work. So if the future of Hive is really second layer apps, that doesn't mean there's nothing left to do at the first layer. There's still plenty of room to improve the first layer in terms of performance, for instance. We can continue lowering the costs of operating Hive node, further decentralize the network infrastructure, and plenty of ideas for things like improving the resource credit system, plus potential improvements to governance and base layer tokenomics. For example, there's been a lot of interest in things like instant power down for a fee. So I don't see work on the base layer ending anytime soon, but I do believe that half will be a big step forward in simplifying the decentralization of Hive development. So at this point, I've concluded my discussion of the half framework. So I'll pass the mic to Martin, who will be discussing a long-awaited feature that he's been working on, resource credit delegation. And how do I do that?
There's a button to the top right.
Say that one more time.
There is a red button to the top right, which you can use to block.
The X?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you. So also delegations. You know, we've been talking about it for a long time. The reason why it's still not here yet is because we have reworked it from the ground up. We used to do something which used, you may have heard of the term RC pools, and and over delegation and stuff like this. This is what the Steemit team had initially drafted that we then perfected. But over time, we realized that it was inefficient and far too complex, which presented some challenges both in coding and also in the way we would execute it, which could place a burden on the chain we did not want to go forward to. Therefore, we reworked the entire thing to be more akin to Hive power delegation. So it's a very simple, I want to give you 10 RC, I will give you 10 RC. It does present some challenges when you want to really automate everything. So we made sure that in order to delegate RC, you do it using your posting key. So that means you can very easily give the authority to an application to grant RC on your behalf. So that means if you want to support, let's say, OCD to bring more, to help newcomers with more RC, you can just give them your posting authority. That way they can delegate some RC on your behalf. So also one of the benefits of the rework is that now there is no longer a limit on the number of delegations you can have at once. So that means you can delegate to the whole chain if you want, although you need this is not recommended. And we know that a lot of people will end up wanting to migrate from Hive power delegations to RC delegations, namely Sprinter and other very big DApps. And so we have made it so that you can delegate to as many as 100 accounts at once. The whole idea is really to be able to onboard your users and as many users as you want and be able to make RC useful again. The whole idea of RC is that it's supposed to be a scarce resource. You can really see it as gas on Ethereum, let's say, and we want to incentivize people to power up to then use that RC to basically delegate it to people. We expect a lot of things to happen on L2, like RC markets, where you can like lend RC, you can buy RC for a specific application. If you're planning to do a very big, let's say, a very big NFT mint, and you want to like give a ton of NFT to people, you may need a lot of RC to do that. So you could like rent RC to do your operations and then give you the RC back. So as always, as blocktrades mentioned, you always ask, when is it going? So the good news is it's built. Right now, I actually plan on doing a demonstration during this during HiveFest, but it's incredibly bland because you give RC and then you have RC, so it's not really that interesting. But it's built, it works, although there are a few bugs to be ironed out, so it's being polished. But we do plan to ship it with hard fork 26, which date is not hard set, but it should happen at the end of the year or maybe right after. So yeah, that's some of the layer 1 things. On top of that, I'm also very focused on communities. So the one thing about communities is something that everyone keeps wanting, because it's one of the big strengths of Hive, but it can seem as if communities are being like left aside, but it's not true. We actually work on it. The very good news about communities is that it was built also on something called HiveMind, which is kind of like a precursor to Half. And so as soon as Half will ship, we'll be able to improve drastically the way HiveMind works, and communities will benefit from it in the same thing. So that means we will be able to put a lot of focus on monetizing communities. So that's something we've been wanting to do for a long time. This is the reason why in half of 25 we built recurrent transfers. The idea is that then we will be able to have communities where you can have like custom tokens in the community. You can have recurrent transfers, custom membership, where in order to be a member to a certain community, you have to pay some money every month. It could be like some deals community or something like this. We are still not planning to do the private communities because it requires a lot of, let's say, crypto magic, which we are not committed to doing yet. But it is possible. But not in a fully decentralized manner. So I encourage you to build upon this idea, and you can make it like in a semi-centralized way and still benefit from everything that Communities V2 has to offer. And finally, my last thing would be that HiveMind is in Python, which is a very common language. If you're a developer, you probably know it. And I know it can seem daunting to work on Hive and like blockchain code and everything, but you just have to start. And like everything is open source, you can contribute, and we all look forward to seeing your contributions if you do come. So yeah, now it's time for you to ask you any questions you have about anything in this presentation or otherwise. I'll let Roland manage all of the questions because I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. So I'm opening up the hand raises. Please only use the raise your hand feature if you want to ask an actual question. Again, if you don't want to ask a question, but you click the icon because you like the icon, just click on it again, so you will be removed. But first off, I want to give the mic to Brian of London. You're on air.
Hello, everybody hear me?
Sure, mate.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, guys. Thanks very much. A question about RC and RC delegation. In many ways, I'm running this thing PodPing, which puts quite a lot of transactions through, but nothing like Splinterlands. And I think RCs are actually too cheap for what I'm doing, for posting custom JSONs. They're going to get more expensive with RC delegations allowing us to share them around better.
Yes and no. Let's say RC basically scale with usage. And so right now, if there is a specific set of RC being used, the price shouldn't increase that much. But as basically well, I'll say no, but overall, yes, because delegating RC won't change much, but RC delegation should allow for a lot more growth in the Hive ecosystem, which should then lead to more usage, which will in turn lead to way more RC costs. It should also be noted that blocktrades has in the work to kind of review the way RC works, and so that may lead to some price changes. The whole goal of like the pricing of RC and it being quote unquote too cheap or too expensive is that the idea is to curb the growth of the blockchain, and so the RC should basically, the witnesses have agreed that they are okay sustaining certain growth in terms of costs and resources, and so if the RC system does not match that, then we should increase the cost, base cost, I mean. But if it works, then and RC is cheap, it just means that our blockchain is very efficient, and so that's a good thing actually. So, yeah.
No, I agree with that. I couldn't do what I'm doing on any other system in the world. So, but no, it seems like magic that an investment of what was 1,000 Hive, a few months ago, is enough to run a global notification system, which is what I'm doing, which is fantastic. So, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. UA promoter, I'm going to put you on air.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much for your work. You're doing really great things for Hive. I'd like to ask, I already asked it in a post about the idea from they called me then proposed it to instant delegation, instant power down. So user be able to install power down with some percent that goes to stakeholders. Any idea when it can be implemented or schedule it, or what do you think?
I think there's a strong interest in doing it by a lot of people as far as getting the feature. So I think it's definitely on the roadmap. I would like to fit it into hard fork 26, but it's kind of late in the cycle. So I'm not sure we'll be able to really without delaying hard fork 26 itself. So I can't answer for sure yet. I won't say it's impossible that we could fit into hard fork 26, but I certainly don't want to promise at this point. But I'm sure if worst case, we'd fit it into the next hard fork if we don't make it into this hard fork.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thanks, UA, for your question. Lunatic, you're on the air. Phone your question, please.
I pressed the wrong button, so I had no questions.
You liked the raise your hand icon. It's great, huh?
Yeah, it's
hand. You do so many things with
like
it.
It happened.
Okay, see
The
ya.
Trump jokes will come next.
Okay, Ladybug, I'm gonna put you on the air. I hope you also like the icon, but do have a question. Ladybug, you are on the
That's
air.
one popular icon.
Ladybug, you can unmute yourself and then ask your question. And the world is waiting for Ladybug. I'll return to you when you found out how it works. And then we have how their roles, or how Daryl rolls. Hey man, how are you?
Hey guys. So I have a plan to create my own community, but I want to build communities within communities. Is that possible yet, or is that something that I'm going to have to figure out how to program and add in myself?
Well, I guess the first question I'd have is, what exactly do you mean by that? What's the feature set that you're looking for?
Well, I want to revolutionize sponsorship of sports, where people are essentially sponsoring themselves through community actions. So I want to be able to create my own little front end that's going to have like a space for longboarders, for skateboarders, bikers, every kind of extreme sport. And so far, it just seems like the best thing I can do is just simply create a tag for each one to keep them separate, as opposed to having their own little communities. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess what you're talking about is spawning multiple. I mean, maybe you could do it today. You could spawn multiple communities and just basically somehow identify to your front end that those are the communities you want to show, I suppose. We don't have a way, as far as I know yet, to tag a community, but how Martin might remember otherwise. But I feel like that's something that wouldn't be difficult to do. If it's really just a matter of grouping together a bunch of communities that, you know, you want to show in the front end. If there's more to it, then maybe, you know, it might need to be extra features added.
Yeah, to add to that, it's been discussed to have, mostly with the PGD team, basically to build themes for communities so that you could aggregate stuff. But right now, it's mostly in the design phase more than anything else. But yeah, to reply to your question in terms of development, it wouldn't be too hard to group multiple communities from like an L2 perspective, where you basically get the feed of multiple things and like merge everything together. So yes, to reply to your question, you will have to build it together yourself for now.
Okay, good to know.
Great, thanks. So the Hive, your time to shine.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to explain this question very well. Following on to what the previous question was, is there a possibility of developing for a template front end? So somebody like myself or the previous speaker can create our own front end to the chain. Now, my thinking is this would only run on a posting authority, because that's all it would do. If you wanted to vote on a post, you would have to go to one of the other front ends type of thing. And that would be so people like me would keep the security of the funds, where that particular site would only have access to a posting key that can access the funds. But a template like that would allow for the previous speaker to put his own headings in on his own template for his own things, and he would only show sports within his front end. All the sports that he's related to would all be there, and all his different links where we have community links, it would all be his little tags, and he would be able to keep track of things better. If that's making any sense, I'll pass the mic back.
So if I got the question right, I think you're asking if it'd be possible to, say, skin your own front end. So basically take something like hive.blog and then customize it a bit to give it a unique look and feel, and then basically group together some of the communities to display them. I mean, up too much. You could kind of do that today. You would have to hire a programmer to do the skinning, but a lot of it's pretty feasible to do today, I say. But I'm sure more could be done to make that probably get to the point where you really don't need any programming skill, I guess, with a little bit of work. But and that's just hive.blog. That's one potential front end to do that. But really, that's Ecency might be another app that could be looked at for doing that kind of scanning. But that's probably best to ask Good Karma as far as what would be the best way to do that. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Martin?
Not really. It's pretty much what you said. I should add also that it doesn't have to be us who could build it, because Hive.blog is built on open source. So if like you find someone with the skills to build it, we would definitely be able to look into it.
Yeah, we could integrate their work into the repo. Anybody can basically contribute. So
That's
to
true.
add to that, I would probably be of the mindset now is whereas that type of thing is why the DAO or the DHF is there to fund these things for the development. And that seems like a type of thing that should be done and makes the development and the progress of what is development common to everybody, so we can all develop our own front end and all get into the chain and bring in people from all walks of life.
So, sorry to interrupt.
Concentration on.
Sorry, you're currently no longer on the air. I'm correct, right? Sorry to interrupt, guys. I wanna, because we have 10 more minutes. If you're okay with it, I'm gonna wanna give Lazybug also the mic to ask a question. Lazybug, are you here?
Yeah, did I click on raise hand?
Here we go again.
Sorry,
You like the hand?
Sort of had a Darth Vader vibe going there.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. It's okay. Say hi. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, cheers. Okay, Hero, I'm gonna pass it on to you. You're on the air tonight. Just like Phil. No? Hero, are you Hero? Hiro Yamashi. Yeah, let's tweet him. Okay. Big Mac, do you have a question for the core development team? Cannot put Epic Mac on the Eliezer Flower. Hey, Eliezer. Eliezer Floy, do you have a question for the core development team? Welcome. You're on the air. Do you also like the raise hand icon? Maybe people think the raise hand means that you actually raise your hands to say yay, but that's not the thing. Steve Sist, you're on the air. Hey, man.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, this is Steve Trost, Trost Paradox. So I have a question about usernames and the possibility of having the ability to reserve usernames like any name that ends in .xyz. So basically allowing for developers or someone that wants to launch a new project and wants to grant usernames to people who sign up, but have something unique about those usernames. So like either 1, 2, or 3 character after the dot at the end of a username.
Yeah, no, I
be
get
able,
the
and be
idea.
able to have the exclusive use. Yeah, have the exclusive ability to grant those usernames.
Yeah, we had a similar feature in BitShares. It wasn't for account usernames, that it was for assets. So for coins, basically, you could basically get a namespace for a set of coins, and you could trust that all those coins were basically supported by person. And I guess you're asking for the same thing in terms of account names. We definitely don't have that ability now. I'd say we could add it, but I'm not sure it'd be, a kind of a high priority at the moment, unless, we have a lot of people express that interest. There's probably workarounds that can be done, I guess.
Well, so where I'm going at with this is, so right now my understanding is if I use a dot in a username, there has to be at least 3 characters after the dot. Is that correct?
That's what I recall. Yeah, I think that's true.
So what I'm wondering about is if we make the capability of adding 1 or 2 letters after a dot instead of 3, and then basically setting up where you can auction the rights for a specific 1 or 2 letter combination. And where I'm going with this is, if I want to set up a system where folks can migrate, so folks can be uniquely identified with my system. So if it's .xy, so if I have the ability to exclusively grant access to those .xy's, and let's say I tie this into Twitter login, similar to what Leo Finance has with their Twitter onboarding, so that I can reserve that somebody can have the same Twitter username on Hive for that particular.
Would 2 letters be okay? You're talking about 2 letters, like a prefix of 2 letters, right? And then the rest
suffix
of
or prefix. Yeah, suffix or prefix. Yeah.
Okay, so you'd have the 2-letter prefix and then all the rest of the characters. Because I was thinking at first you were saying you only had 2 letters for variation, and obviously that wouldn't cover many accounts.
No, where I'm going at with this is, if I want to create an application that uses Twitter as the onboarding mechanism, I want to be able to announce that, have that going, and not be run the risk of people cyber squatting on usernames from Twitter.
Right, so you could be every TW dot would be a Twitter handle.
Right.
Or something .tw if you're using the suffix approach. Yeah, I mean.
Right. I mean, I see some significant potential that would add for people that want to start a project but want to make sure that they can grant usernames that would be exclusive to their project.
Yeah, I mean, I think something like that could be added. Certainly the potentially problematic thing would be if valid third-party apps that are out there, the second layer apps that are out there, if they do their own account name checking for validating, they'd have to update to recognize these new names that have become valid. But I doubt there's a lot of that. I suspect most account validation is done by asking the node itself if it's a valid account, so without doing a pre-check on the name. So it's probably not terribly hard to do. I think we could look at that and see just how much work's involved.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I mean, I see it as something that could potentially expand use cases for new projects.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think it's definitely got a valid use case for sure.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like interesting. Yeah, you would need to add a new layer of validation right on top of so you would have, maybe the dot would not work because normally the dots is already available, and there would be a new class of usernames or something like this, which should be built into the core software of HiveD to validate and maybe reserve this to somebody who claimed ultimate ownership of this. Let's call it a subdomain or something like this. Exactly how.
Yeah, maybe these accounts would cost a little more to reserve.
Yeah. Good idea. Hey, Steve, thanks a lot for your question. I'm going to do the last question to Rolly. You're on the air, Andrew from Crypto Brewmaster.
Hello, you hear me?
Hey, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for development. Thanks for what you're doing. And I have a few questions for Dan for the blocktrades. The first one is about, you mentioned that framework for the dApp developers, and you mentioned that there will be some kind of possibility to make the tokens, right? Tokens for decentralized applications.
Yes.
And those tokens should be like on the Hive second layer or Hive mainnet. Is there some estimated time for this to be live? Because it's very important for us, as we had some few issues with the Hive engine, so we migrated from the Hive engine, and we still looking forward to do our tokens on the mainnet of Hive. So this is important for us. So this is the first question.
Okay, so just to answer that one, I guess quickly, we don't have a definite date yet. We haven't scoped out the task, so that's really the problematic issue for giving you a date yet. We have to go look at just how much work needs to be done. But my feeling is sometime next year, in 2022. But I couldn't tell you when in that time. It could be short, it could be long. We really got to sit down and just look at how many things we need to code up in order to make it happen. But half was kind of the big first step, because that's what we planned on building everything else on top of. So that's done now. So
Okay.
what's your second question,
Thanks.
I guess?
Yeah, thanks. So we will definitely check the half and check out if we can work out and implement it somehow. Second question was about the communities. You mentioned the tokenizing communities. Is it pretty the same as the first questions, or
Yes. Yeah.
it's the same, right? So okay, so the second question is answered. Thanks. Third question for me is also very important, because we at Crypto Brewmaster, one of those referrals that onboarded, I think, more than 1,000 people through our referral link through the hiveonboarding.com. Yeah, and like we having the issue for the Russia. For Russia, we haven't the issue because they have, I guess the Hive is blocked for Russia. But anyway, people cannot easily register new accounts at the moment for Hive, free of charge. And some people don't want to pay. Maybe it was the idea to create some service. So this is just my thoughts, and this is the question for maybe everybody and the developers of different application. Maybe it was an idea to create something that can easily onboard people, something like Wax Cloud Wallet did, for example, when you register your account through some kind of centralized platform, Facebook or maybe Google or Twitter, and then your keys got stored somewhere in decentralized space on the Hive blockchain. And when you really need those keys, you can have them, claim them, or something like that. So question, if it's possible, or have you thought about to build some easy stuff for that? This is, yeah.
So I haven't personally worked on the onboarding initiatives. I guess there's a couple different devs that have been trying out different approaches for that. I guess the consensus is there still needs to be work done in that area, but I can't say I've looked into it much myself to see what the options are. Maybe Martin has some.
So to weigh in on this, the main problem with basically easing onboarding, because basically it's a witness parameter, so anyone can realistically, if the witness got together and were okay with the growth of the chain kind of exploding, we could set all accounts to be free. The issue is we don't want that to be a reality for many obvious reasons. But I will add that RC delegations should ease up a lot of that process. basically, right now you have account tokens that you can use to claim free accounts. And the issue is that if you want the person you onboard to have a nice experience, you need to delegate some Hive power to that person. Otherwise, they will post like 2 comments and be blocked, which is not a good experience. So with RC delegations, you'll be actually able to create a free account and then delegate some RC. And then you will not have these issues that you used to have with abuse, where people would try to get like 1,000 accounts with like 5 Hive power and then try to like self-vote and stuff, which is always caught, by the way, don't try it. But it has been like a challenge for a lot of the onboarding services. And so this is where RC delegations should help a lot in that regard. And then, yes, I haven't been myself involved with any of those developments in terms of how to ease the onboarding process, mostly as part of like L2. But I've seen some interesting developments going around, mostly done by SNC and Hive Onboard and other services, where they either validate you through a phone number, a centralized account from another social media and stuff like this. So there is a lot of ideas to be tried. It's mostly a matter of just trying them and seeing what works. But yeah, I think RC delegations should help a lot.
Ooh, thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot for the Q&A. It's very clear. If you please stick around for a bit longer, ladies and gentlemen, a round of emoji for howo and blocktrades. Thanks a lot, guys, once again.
Thanks for
and did you know that you can actually follow the core development meetings, right?
Yeah, they put up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. youtube.com/hive-io, I think, is the URL. Otherwise, look on hive.io to find the URL to the YouTube link. The bi-weekly developer core development meetups are can be attended. And should you have feedback or questions about any products, that's always possible, or maybe suggestions, to ask for a speaking slot over there. Thanks for now. I want to invite up the stage. Thanks, guys. Have a great HiveFest. See you later at the bowling.